let me tell you that I'm honored to meet you, to meet you.
Oh, well, it's just me. Don't worry about it.
And you know, I grew up playing like God of War and Twisted Metal. I even bought a Twisted Metal back before buying the PlayStation 2.
Oh, really? Did you play the ones on PS1 first?
Yes.
So were already a fan before it came out?
Yes, I
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
My favorite one is Twisted Metal 2.
Yeah, most people say that. I think that's probably, gameplay-wise, that's probably the best one. Absolutely, no doubt. I think Black I really like because the world and the characters and the story, but I think 2 is just better gameplay. You know, it wasn't as fast. It wasn't as it was a little smarter.
And we see nowadays that big Hollywood directors like Christopher Nolan, they said that they want to go into the video game business.
Yeah, they don't know what they're talking about, though. They really don't. I mean, maybe a few of them do, you know, but to go, you know, going into the video game business like Steven Spielberg did with EA, where he did Boom Blocks, or he did that LMNO, which was never got shipped, but it was kind of like a artificial intelligent robot story thing. It's one thing to go into the business and lend your name and attend a couple of meetings and do PR and help with marketing, but I'll take Christopher Nolan or Guillermo del Toro, or there was another one the other day that announced Vin Diesel. I'll take these guys serious when they say, okay, you know what? I'm going to put my film career on hold for 2 to 3 years, and I'm going to embed with the team, and I'm going to be one of the team members, and I'll direct a game. But otherwise, it's just lip service. It doesn't really manifest as, holy cow, I'm playing a Martin Scorsese game. It's just you know, it's bullshit.
It doesn't add up.
I mean, I'm not saying it has to. Well, it's certainly interesting. I mean, seriously, if Christopher Nolan said, "Hey, I really love video games so much, and I want to put my career on hold, and I want to do this job," I think it could potentially be amazing. But I don't. Why in the world would you give up the amount of money and the amount of freedom that he already has in film to come into video games, where it's harder to tell stories, it's harder to express emotion, you don't make near as much money. It's hard to imagine it would actually happen, but it would be cool if it did one day.
I remember the cancelled project from Hideo Kojima, PT. I think Guillermo del Toro was working with him on it.
Well, yeah, but what does that mean, though? Was Guillermo del Toro sitting there in Japan at Konami or wherever they were doing it and going, okay, you know what I'm saying? I don't know specifically what his involvement was, but I have never heard, and I have colleagues that worked with some of these people in video games. I'm not going to say their names, of some of these big shot directors, great directors. And I would be like, oh, well, what was it like? Is he there all the time? And they're like, no, he goes off and shoots his movie, and he comes in for a week, has a few meetings, he goes off, he plays a build, maybe he'll send a couple of notes. It's very hands off. But if Del Toro was like, no, man, this is what I'm doing, that's awesome. He would do an amazing job on a video game.
So let me ask you, the next question is, after you left PlayStation, your goal was to create your own studio, and we saw.
Well, my goal was to make a ton of money
by creating a studio, right?
Yeah, I'm only being a little silly about it, but I mean, I had everything I wanted at Sony. I had great teams to work with, great bosses, great pay. But the truth of the matter is, I lived in Los Angeles, which, you know, I don't know what city you're in, but LA's not the most expensive city in the world, but it's in the top 7. I mean, and I was a big deal at PlayStation, and I couldn't even afford to buy a home in Los Angeles. And it was like, are you kidding me? You know? And I saw all my friends who were selling studios, and I just had my second kid. And I'm like, you know what? I don't want to raise my kids, you know, in Los Angeles unless I can actually put them in a really good school and buy a really nice, I don't need a mansion or anything, but just a place where I feel that they're secure and happy and healthy and all that. And it was just like, this is ridiculous. I'm working way too hard I'm working harder than some of my friends who had made a ton more money by having companies and selling them. And I'm like, let's go explore that. It never worked out for me because I think ultimately when you chase money, you end up getting, I think keeping your eye on your finances is important. But it's hard to learn that lesson, but I ultimately learned it, which was the biggest successes I have been the things that have come from what I'm excited about and passionate about. And maybe they work, maybe they don't, but I've never been successful when my number one goal was anything other than being a slave to the creative output that I'm trying to express. That's the only thing that gets me through the day. So a lesson learned. But anyway, yeah, that's why I started Eat, Sleep, Play with Scott Campbell. And then after that, we did Bartlett Jones.
Yeah. So Bartlett Jones, we saw Drawn to Death.
Yes.
And what happened after that? Are you done with...
After Drawn to Death?
Yes.
So Drawn to Death came out, I would say every game that's ever been released, including probably Superman 64, has its fans. Drawn to Death does have people who still tell me to this day they really loved it. They're sad it's gone. But for the most part, I think it's fair to say it was a massive failure. It was a critical failure, absolutely. All my games have been profitable except this one. It didn't come close to making its money back. And so we got another deal. We were working on another game, and it was fine. Like I think it would have made a good game, but it wasn't a passion project. It was more like, well, we need to keep the lights on, keep the company going, figure out what's next. And we were about maybe 3 to 6 months into development, and then that company came in and said, we're changing our where we're putting our money in our company, and we can no longer fund this game. And so at that point, Nick Cotinellis and I, who ran the company and owned the company, it was like, we have to make a decision. And we spent a couple of weeks trying to keep it going. I think I was just done. I had been going nonstop since, I was 24. And at the time I was like 46. And I was like, okay, you know what? I don't want to, I just don't have the energy right now to jump back into flying all over the country, looking for the best programmer I can find and looking for office space and, pitching everybody, hoping somebody likes my idea enough to give me money. So I just said, you know what? Nick was in agreement. I was in agreement. We were just going to shut the thing down. So we did. We shut it down. That was about almost going on 3 years. It might be 3 years to this week that company, has been, no one's really working inside of it. So yeah, that's the last game. I might go back into it, but I'm currently not planning on it. I mean, you never know what will happen, but at the moment, I'm really enjoying the stuff I'm doing now. So,
okay, so let's talk about Twisted Metal. How do you see it in the future? Do you agree with the idea of a remake, or like Destruction All Stars, a free game?
Well, I mean, I don't think right now, the best shot, as far as I can tell, that Twisted Metal has at being another game is they are making a TV series, or at least they're planning on making a TV series. I've met with the people who are working on it. They've pitched me what they want to do. We'll see if it actually gets off the ground. Like today, they just announced the roles for people who are starring in The Last of Us, the guy from The Mandalorian, and I think it's one of the women from Game of Thrones. I know some of the people, the actors that are supposed to be involved with Twisted Metal, but I think if they get announced, we'll have a better idea that it might actually happen. My point being, though, is that if it happens and it's successful, then I could see Sony maybe going, okay, we definitely don't want to make a straight up car combat game anymore, because unless you make that really inexpensively, it's a genre that, it's been incorporated into so many other bigger types of games that just focusing on pure car combat, it's really hard with cars, because unlike with still first person shooters that you can still eke out some freshness, cars have such a limited range of motion and a limited range of being able to express yourself in 3D space that it gets boring really quickly. So I think the TV show would help. I would love to see Sony, frankly, open up a sort of a boutique publisher that's still part of PlayStation, but it's not main PlayStation, because there are so many franchises, from Twisted Metal to Jet Moto to SOCOM to Parappa, to Ratchet, not Ratchet, Sly Cooper. There's all of these franchises that aren't really AAA, but they are still beloved by so many fans around the world. And Sony is just right now, at least it seems from an outside perspective, letting these things kind of die or wilt away. And it's like, you guys have these great intellectual properties, and yeah, they're not AAA, but you can still make a good business move. That's right. You know, doing stuff with this stuff, you know. And so I hope what they do, I would love to see Sony go, look, we're going to open up a division, and we're gonna kick it off with like 3 to 4 games. Each one will cost no more than like $12 million. So they're not going to be the best looking games in the world, but they're going to speak directly to the fans of those intellectual properties and also try to build new fans. I hope that happens with Sony, but short of that, I think it's kind of dead unless the TV series takes off.
Okay, so let's move on to God of War.
Yeah.
What do you think of the performance of Christopher Judge as Kratos in the latest version, and the development from the angry Spartan to more calmed down father?
I really liked it. I only played the new God of War recently, right? So I had not played it since a month ago, maybe. I think I played it in December or something. And I just thought it was fantastic. I really, really loved it. I mean, it was really cool that Corey had found this idea. The director, Corey Barlog, had found this idea, and one of the main writers, to not just reboot it, but to literally say what would happen if, you know, this angry video game character kind of grew up. I've never seen that before, and I think there's a freshness to that really works in that game. And I think it's well written. I think the graphics are great. The gameplay is fun. You know, I have a couple of issues with it. I did a review on my YouTube channel the other day. But overall, though, I think it's quite fantastic. I think Christopher Judge was great. You know, the character is so different, you know, as is almost dictated by the story. He's a different guy. And I think it would have been cool to keep T.C. Carson, because, you know, as a human, T.C. Carson has also matured and grown, and his voice has probably gotten a little older, and that would have been a nice sense of connective tissue between the two games. But my understanding is they wanted the voice actor to also be the performance actor in motion capture. And I guess Christopher Judge, I know Christopher, he's a big dude, and T.C. Carson is, I think, shorter than I am, and I'm like 5'6". So you know, that was unfortunate in my opinion. I had nothing to do with it, but I thought Christopher Judge, they all did a great job. The only actor I didn't really like, and it's not that he wasn't a good actor, I thought the kid was great, Kratos was great, what's her name, Freya, the witch in the woods. Yeah, she was great. Baldur, I thought, was weird in the sense that he was good, but it was almost like he was doing like a Johnny Depp, Jack Sparrow ripoff. Like, I couldn't ever get beyond the fact that I'm like, I think he's trying to do Johnny Depp. I didn't really buy him as his own character, but I mean, these are nitpicks. It was phenomenal game.
Well, in the last few years, we saw a shift from the story-driven games to the battle royale system and multiplayer games, online games. Do you think that this move was better for the industry?
Well, okay. So I'm going to, unless you disagree, I'm going to lump battle royale into games as a service, right? Because, I mean, it's all the same thing, right? It's a game that never ends. They're always updating it. They're always adding to it. It's not really focused on narrative. It's focused on getting with your friends and playing. It's a social game. That end of the day, that makes a shit ton of money.
Yes.
So the industry is kind of the AAA industry that a lot of us are used to, is absolutely before our very eyes transitioning very much like the movie business did, which is You're definitely going to have fewer people making really big games, just like you saw the movie studios, contract to only be like 4 or 5, where there used to be like 12. Now, after Sony and Microsoft and Nintendo, you've got like 4 or 5 third-party big publishers and a couple of, scrappy dudes. The games are costing insane amounts of money, right? And so the companies are approving design decisions that maximize their ability to make the most profit. And those are not, 12-hour single-player action-adventure narrative games that cost $230 million. Sony's a little bit different because it's not that they don't want to make money, and they're making a boatload of money, but they also are selling hardware. So they need these showpieces to differentiate their hardware from Xbox or Nintendo. But if you're Activision, if you're Ubisoft literally came out yesterday in a press release and said, or actually their earnings call with investors and said, we're not going to rely as much in the future on AAA. We're going to start relying more on games as a service and mobile. It doesn't mean they're not going to make AAA games, but they're kind of shifting where they're placing their bets, it sounded like, from what they were telling investors, because the games cost a lot of money. And if you look, it's staggering. We talked about this on my stream. If you look at the amount of money certain mobile phone games make, hit mobile phone games, the figure that blew my mind was Ubisoft just had the best quarter in their history. And I want to say they reported in December revenues. I'm going to get this wrong. It wasn't $500 million, but it was a lot of money. It was less than that. But Supercell, that does Clash of Clans and does a bunch of these mobile games, they just had their 4th video game, cell phone game, do $1 billion in revenue. The mobile phone, that's 4 games. The mobile phone games are making $200, $300, $400 million in a month, right? These games are making that in a lifetime, the AAA games. So if you're Activision, if you're EA, who just, by the way, bought Glue Mobile, why in the world would you say, here's $180 million, go make a big epic single-player game, versus going, here's $50 million, let's spread that out and make 20 mobile phone games, and if one hits, we're in the money for 10 years. I don't know, 10 years, but so it just doesn't make sense for AAA to do anything other than shrink. It's still going to be around. It's still going to be viable. But I think, like movies, you're going to see it be like a lot of gamers aren't going to want to hear this, because a lot of gamers, what they love about games is production value, graphics, special effects, all that. And that'll still be there, but it won't be as much. To get the story-based stuff and all that, it's going to be like movies. If you want a really good story, yeah, Marvel's got great stories, but a lot of real hardcore film fans are also indie movie fans. I think if you really love video games and you want to see interesting stuff that you're not seeing in AAA, you're going to start seeing more people migrate to the indie space, because you can take more chances. So it's a real fascinating time for the industry. I love watching it. I don't want to be part of it, but I love watching it.
So actually, my last question was about this thing. Are you ever thinking of getting back to the industry, to creating video games?
So the situation for me, and obviously, I love streaming. I love making videos. I'm not PewDiePie. I'm not making shit tons of money, doing it. So it's not like I can do this forever without, getting either much more successful or doing something else. But as long as I can do this, I want to do what I'm doing now, unless an opportunity comes along. Like, there's a couple of producers, there's a couple of companies that I would say, okay, if that opportunity crossed my path, I'd say, okay, that's worth getting back in for. But the idea of just like, David Jaffe goes to Ubisoft and gets a job as a director on an Assassin's Creed game, and I'm having to deal with all these marketing people and all these executives and all these people who want to get their fingers in the pie. And I have no interest in that. That was never my motivating factor when I started in video games. So I don't think I would be good at that. I think I would lose my mind, because for me, what I loved so much, all the way up to Drawn to Death, even though it wasn't successful, is Sony came to me and said, hey, they gave me the budget of a AAA filmmaker, but they gave me the freedom of an indie filmmaker, which was basically they left me alone for the most part and let me and the team cook up whatever we wanted to. And I came into the industry when there was that great sweet spot. If I was Jim Ryan, if I was Phil Spencer, and they were looking for someone to bring on to direct a $230 million game, I don't know if I'd be the right guy to do it. Because I don't want to do politics, and I don't want to please. I don't want to learn who the right people are at the company that I have to please before I get my way. You know, it's just that's a job in and of itself. So it's possible I'll get back to the industry. I'm not really thinking about it right now.
Well, I think that's all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, of course. Thanks for having me. No, I appreciate your support, man. And when this goes live, give me a link. I'll send it out. I'm glad we could do it tonight or today for you. All right. I'll see you later.